to pin the stream. Oh boy, I got a whole bunch of tabs open that I shouldn't have open.
Oh, Evan is here. Okay, Jeff wants to come up. Taiwan Jeff. Hi. Tom wants to come up. Hey, the rest
Hello.
I don't know.
And now we've pinned
Hi.
it.
The rest I'm not confident. Tyler will decide.
Cheryl, it's Roy. Bring Roy up.
Roy? He didn't put up his hands. Okay, Roy is here. Yes. Welcome, Roy.
Hey, what's up? How's it going, everyone?
Hey,
Yo.
It's
Roy.
good.
I feel like this is my first time to join like right on time.
No, you are 5 minutes after the top of the hour.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Sorry.
But we're still getting it together to be fair.
It's still considered early, not started yet. Oh, Ehon.
Oh,
Okay,
are we on time? We're
that's
5 minutes late.
official.
Let's do it. Okay.
That's official.
So, the top story, happy Tuesday, is that Twitter makes its version 2 API announced in August 2020, so just a year and a couple months later. The defaults for developers, giving third-party apps more freedom as it aims to become more decentralized. Twitter's new API is finally official, but let's read it directly from the Twitter source. And it says, build what's next with the new Twitter developer platform. Today, we're sharing some major upgrades to our developer platform, some of the biggest changes to date. These include making it easier to get started on our platform with the introduction of what's called essential access and opening up more access for free, updating our developer policy to engage new types of innovation that will lead to greater impact on the public conversation itself, and launching new features and officially making version 2 API the primary Twitter API. Get started right away for free. Welcome to the Twitter API, and you've got 3 different options: the essentials, the elevated, and the managed. And it says they're doubling down on developers.
Doubling down, is this after years of screwing developers? Because I actually remember when everyone got screwed by Twitter's own development team.
Yes, we covered this story when we met in our last meeting 8 hours ago, and we covered that rather extensively. The history of the Great Betrayal of 2009, where sometime around there, maybe 10, where Twitter had an API and people spent a lot of money and a lot of time, even raised money. Loic Lemire raised a ton of money for Seismic. And whatever the Twitter company he built, and he thought of himself as very friendly with the Twitter founders, and he sort of was. And then they left him and hundreds, if not thousands, of developers high and dry when they did. It was a bit of a rug pull. I mean, they would characterize it as similar to, when you get your crypto stolen out of your wallet, like your company just got the plug pulled on it, and there's people still very angry about this, and evidenced by some of the tweets that people are sharing on Twitter. Oh, and my friend Loic, who I just referenced, this will be interesting. So Loic, who's on Twitter at Loic, Loic, he's from France, very smart dude. Was one of France's earliest, biggest entrepreneurs, came to the U.S., San Francisco, 2007, was building companies. He built one of these Twitter companies that got rug pulled, and so I'm interested to see what his tweet says about this. He says, Twitter finally opening up the API and maybe decentralized. For those here for 10 years, you will understand the joke. I should restart Seismic, because that's the company that I was just talking about that he did 10 years, or 2009-ish. Twitter basically one day told me I couldn't do what I was doing anymore and changed all the rules. Well, to his credit, he doesn't sound that bitter about it. But you could understand how if you had built a company with 100 employees, and then one day Twitter says, yeah, you can go ahead and shut your doors down and fire everybody, and tell your investors you're sorry for taking, $10 million of their money. You can imagine how upset a lot of people, developers are that built their startups on top of Twitter's APIs. And you can understand the hesitancy, as Evan was, very accurately articulating, to, repeat that scenario.
I
Totally.
would say one
I
lesson
always,
is, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Frenzy.
I'm a friend of Loic's, and I can always remember. And I was on Seismic, and it was wonderful, and it was way, way ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm watching people on Clubhouse trying to build things on top of Clubhouse, and I'm saying, why are you even doing that? If you know about Twitter, yeah, then I'm sure you do. Why even bother? Because it's so unstable. So a platform of someone else's, building on someone else's platform.
Yeah, I think you don't trust any big tech company, hitching your wagon to their platform or their tools. Try to be as agnostic and open as possible, but it's such a risky bet.
If you don't sign an agreement, then you're running the risk of this. That's just it. If you don't sign an API agreement and a versioning agreement, then this is going to happen to you.
So, in the next big article is that the UK, this is from CNBC, the United Kingdom refers Nvidia's planned ARM acquisition to the CMA for a full investigation carried out over 24 weeks, citing antitrust and national security concerns. Digital and Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries from the UK ordered a Phase 2 probe into Nvidia's $40 billion bid for ARM on Tuesday. Makes sense, actually. Although I imagine that this will, I'm curious if this will go through. And I guess the Carl and the UK geeks might be the best source for getting a pulse check on how likely this is to go through or not.
I haven't looked into any of this myself. I don't know how much pressure we can actually leverage in this instance, so I'm not sure.
So it says the UK government announced Tuesday that it wants a full-blown investigation into Nvidia's takeover of Cambridge chipmaker ARM, which is widely seen as the jewel in the crown of the British tech sector. Digital and Cultural Secretary Nadine Dorries ordered a Phase 2 probe into Nvidia's $40 billion bid for ARM. The probe, to be carried out by the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, over the next 24 weeks, will investigate antitrust concerns and national security issues associated with the deal. The CMA said it had serious concerns about the deal after it completed the initial Phase 1 probe. The takeover is being scrutinized by regulators around the world, and the chip company said in August that the deal is now unlikely to be completed before the initial deadline of March 2022. An NVIDIA spokesperson told CNBC, "We plan on addressing the CMA's initial views on the impact of the transaction on competition, and we will continue to work with the UK government to resolve its concerns." They added that the Phase 2 process will enable us to demonstrate that the transaction will help to accelerate ARM and boost competition and innovation, including in the UK. The company, bought by Japan's SoftBank in 2016 for $32 billion, licenses its chip designs to more than 500 companies who use them to make their own chips. Critics are concerned that the merger could restrict access to ARM's neutral chip designs, and that it could lead to higher prices, less choice, and reduced innovation in the semiconductor industry. But NVIDIA argues that the deal will lead to more innovation and that ARM will benefit from increased investment. Quote, "This combination has tremendous benefit for both companies, our customers, and the industry," says NVIDIA's CEO. Last month, the European Commission, the executive arm of the EU, launched its own in-depth investigation into the deal, which is also being scrutinized by regulators in the US and China. Here's a quote, "Whilst ARM and NVIDIA do not directly compete, ARM's IP is an important input in products competing with those of Nvidia, for example, its data centers, automotive, and Internet of Things, says Margaret Vestager, the European Commission's executive vice president, said in a statement, quote, our analysis shows that the acquisition of ARM by Nvidia could lead to restricted or degraded access to ARM's IP with distortive effects in many markets where semiconductors are used.
I'm not sure I understand that one. I mean, Nvidia is the semiconductor company. They want to sell as many semiconductors as possible, and this is going to help them. So it's not like it's an OEM buying ARM who's going to restrict it to others. So I don't get that argument.
I
I
think
mean,
it's going to go through.
I think I agree with you, Tyler. I think this just feels like due diligence on the UK's part here. Like, it's a relatively major company and there's potentially national security implications to this, maybe. So they want to poke their oars in and maybe put a little bit of pressure on so they can get some assertions for themselves, like for us, basically. You know, you can't shut down any of the operations within the next 10, 15 years, for instance, those kind of things. Maybe just put some checks and balances on the deal. I don't know.
It is. I mean, it is like one of the crown jewels of the UK tech world, right? I mean, aren't too many
Yep.
independent or tech company giants in the
We
UK.
don't really have a lot.
I mean, you remember Acorn Computers and all the great British computer companies that came and went, and this is like the last man standing globally. So it's kind of sad in a way for me.
Okay, next up. Twitter will no longer automatically refresh timelines on the web with new tweets after users complained about disappearing tweets. Twitter is updating its web platform, meaning in the browser, to change the way users see new tweets. The social media giant Twitter will no longer automatically refresh timelines on the web with new tweets, and users can now decide when they want to load new tweets. Twitter acknowledged that in the past, tweets would often disappear from view mid-read when a user's timeline would automatically refresh. Now, users can load new tweets when they want to by clicking the tweet counter bar at the top of their timelines.
Yeah, that was quite annoying. If you were looking at a tweet and then you went back, it would refresh the timeline and you'd lose that position, and then you'd be like, wait, where'd it go? And that was like one of the most frustrating things about just using the app and trying to be productive with it. So
Is it a slow news day? Because that's a top 10 story. That's weird.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is a great point. The next one, Financial Times, Substack, which is the platform where journalists are going to work independent and autonomously on their own terms and write newsletters where they get paid from subscribers directly, which is being rather well funded by none other than Andreessen Horowitz, the large investor in Clubhouse, which is putting its money where its mouth is in this battle against the corporate media. And Substack is taking that money from Andreessen Horowitz and using it to entice journalists to leave the jihad over there at the New York Times and Washington Post and whatnot. And some of them are taking that money and leaving those jobs and working on Substack. But the headline today is that Substack says it has reached 1 million paying subscribers, which is up from 250,000 paying subscribers last December. So a 400% growth is very respectable. And if you can contain 400% growth for one more year, then obviously you grow 400%. If you do that 2 years in a row, which would make it 3 years in a row, you're talking 64x in size over the course of 3 years. So it's, you only need to do that a few years in a row, and you've got a considerable thing on your hands, and the journalists know it, and that's why they're watching this. And Glenn Greenwald, who's one of these journalists who's now writing with Substack, says, in case you've been wondering why there's a never-ending tidal wave of identical articles from liberal corporate media outlets attempting to malign and disparage Substack over the same script over and over, now you know, is because Substack is eating their lunch and
Does the
stealing their.
article talk about Substack paying its top authors, content creators, and how much they make? I was just curious
Let's
because
find out.
I was wondering if anyone on the stage knows like
Yeah, I
the
know they
names.
pay him. Like Andrew Sullivan says
Hmm.
he's getting paid more, than he ever got paid before. But once again, it's building on top of someone's platform. And eventually, if Substack doesn't make money, they're going to run out and these people are going to be without a platform.
Unless,
Yeah, it's a great,
yes, and generally you're correct, of course. I wonder if Substack in that event would give them the email addresses of their subscribers in the event that they.
They say they will. That is the thing. They say they will.
I wonder if you have that in writing, then you could maybe sleep easier about it.
Well, it's in writing in the mainstream media.
Yeah. I'm thinking more in a contract that you could take to a court and say, I want my 100,000 subscribers email.
Yes, dear, I understand.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I write for Substack and I don't monetize. So
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, Evan, it says the number of people paying to subscribe to a Substack newsletter has risen. As I said, Substack, which launched 4 years ago, has 73 employees. High-profile writers have been lured to Substack through cash advances and the prospect of editorial freedom. Some earn serious money. The top 10 writers on Substack together make more than $20 million in revenue a year.
holy
Far
cow!
and huh?
I was just emphasizing that's amazing.
Yeah. So that's 2 million
but
each.
everyone else makes nothing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with
Yep.
influencers and all
Yep.
the rest of it.
Yes. And it's that dynamic is really interesting. As Francine well knows, as anyone who's been watching tech for a long time knows, that is true of YouTube creators. It is true of Twitch streamers. It's true of Amazon sellers. It's true of fairly much everything on the webs comes down to, the top 1% makes 90%. And what do we make of that? By the way, it's the same in the music industry. It's the same in the modeling industry. It's the same in the fashion industry. Is that something? Is there something wrong with that? Because when it happens in America, now there's something egregiously wrong with that.
I have a question. Are people writing like for Substack as opposed to having their own blogs and on maybe WordPress and having their own subscriptions because Substack gives them discovery? Is that the reason they're there? Just
In
because it
part,
makes it easy?
well, two
Okay.
things.
In my
Great.
case, yes. But I will tell you this: Medium gives me more discovery. I write for both,
Mm-hmm.
and
What does
and I
discovery mean?
The
Just
discovery,
more
the
people come to
people
it.
people find out who you are, and otherwise they don't know who you are, and a way of discovering that
Yeah,
whatever you're putting
visibility.
out.
network
So
effect.
I'll give you an example. This is why I thought of it, and this is so many years ago now. But when Business Insider was first starting, I had my own blog because I was doing my hedge fund. So I wrote a blog just because I was doing my own. I wasn't charging for it. And Henry Blodgett, who's the founder of Business Insider, who I knew from Merrill Lynch, asked me, hey, because he saw my stuff. He said, would you mind if we syndicated your columns, your blog? And I probably should have charged him, and I didn't think of it because he ended up selling that company for a couple of $100 million. And I just thought, oh, that's cool because more people will discover me being on Business Insider, so it just gives me free publicity. And that's I basically syndicated a thing I was already writing on my own site to Business Insider. So that's what I meant by discovery. It's
I do, and then I test which one, gets the best engagement. But I'm only doing it for fun. By the way, Henry Blodgett was thrown out of the financial
I
markets. I
know. Well,
remember
I know the whole story. I was a client of his. I was on the institutional side. I understand what he got thrown out for. But that all being said, okay,
he did a wonderful job of repurposing himself.
yeah, he did. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know whether anyone's following the Barstool Sports story, but
Oh yeah.
anytime I heard that name, I start laughing because I hear it in his voice. But anyway,
Well, for those who don't know, Business Insider just did a whopper of a hit piece on the CEO founder of Barstool Sports, which I'm trying to recall his name.
David Portnoy.
David Portnoy, that's it, Dave Portnoy.
Yeah,
And
and by the way, he's got. I want just to be fair to him, even though he's not my cup of tea in terms of his personality. He has put up a bunch of videos refuting all of this,
mhm.
and so I mean I'm not sure if this stuff is going to stick. So
Yeah, no, I've seen the videos, and he seems to be very convincing in his rebuttals to these stories. Actually,
yeah,
his
he done a
evidence,
whole State of the Union on
I
his
saw that.
YouTube page as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
and I got to say, his rebuttal's pretty strong. He diffuses the accusations rather directly, and it's he makes a very good case for that this was a clear a bit of a personal jihad against him to take him down.
Fake news. Fake news.
Yeah, he he made it quite funny. I can't lie. It's actually real. Even though the story isn't funny, right? But he is kind of this very direct character where I think that's his real personality at least. But he's trying to be as honest as possible, and he wants to be as honest and direct as possible at all times. So I guess it works in his favor for his
No,
fan
no, no.
base.
I think he's fine for what he developed for this kind of youth culture. What he does, it's just now a publicly traded gaming company, a big casino company, bought 30% of Barstool, and they're using Barstool as kind of the brand for sports betting. And he's not exactly a corporate type. So I just thought that was kind of what I was saying. It's not. It's kind of a little bit oil and water. I'm not sure how well Barstool, blends in with a regulated casino company. So that was kind of what I was referring to.
So, next article, shall we? Let's see, what do we got? Next one is a whole new hot thing that's gotten quite viral today called Constitution DAO, spelled DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, if I recall correctly.
Yes, and I contributed a small amount of money to the buying of the Constitution. So
You and
I am part of the DAO.
Right, our friend Jeremiah Oyang also has contributed to this DAO.
That's who gets me into these things. Jer-
Yeah, he's quite convincing. Alexis Ohanian, who's one of the co-founders of Reddit, also tweeting about this. And who else? Basically, can you describe this particular DAO? It's just as you said.
There's a
It's
copy of the Constitution there are two copies of the Constitution in private hands, and one of them is being auctioned at Sotheby's for $20 million. And this DAO is an organization of people who are trying to buy it with cryptocurrency. In this organization, they're trying to raise $20 million to buy it at auction,
mm-hmm,
and then do things like make NFTs of it and discuss it and have it on, shown at museums and all kinds of things. I think it's a really great project, but I don't think
because
they're going.
if they make NFTs of it, they could monetize it basically. So you might even potentially
Well,
could sell more
yeah, okay.
right.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not the issue.
Mm-hmm,
I don't think. I mean, the issue that's being discussed in the Discord for it is basically taking back our Constitution from the quote the government unquote.
mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to hit 20 million, Francine.
No, I just said that. I don't. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
But maybe they will. If we keep having slow news days, and it keeps getting discussed on Tech News Today, you never can tell. I mean, Tech News around the
Yeah. Well, what I think is interesting is what comes through my mind, and I shared this when we met in the previous meeting, was this is a form of crowdfunding, right? In this particular case, to acquire an asset. So it's crowd-funded asset acquisition, which,
exactly,
right?
exactly. And I there's a crowdfunding site to which you contribute called Juicebox, and it has a ton, not a ton, but it has a number of DAOs on it that are trying to do crowdfunding. It's not that different from Indiegogo.
But it is, and I'll explain why. And it's different in a beautiful way, because I shared a little story of when Donald Trump announced his presidential campaign the first time. I had the idea that I assumed his motives were financial, exclusively financial, and so I thought, well, maybe we could create a crowdfunding campaign, and raise a bunch of money, and until it got to such a degree that he would accept the money in lieu of running for president. And to me, this was like a performance art piece, almost a political performance, political art, and I thought it'd be fun to do. And I actually I contacted and talked to the folks at Indiegogo and GoFundMe and Stripe, because it turns out I couldn't do it on either of those platforms based on their policies. It was in violation of some of their kind of niche fringe policies. And it was also incompatible with the technical feasibility of Stripe, because they have a limitation on the number of days with which you can hold the funds. And I needed to hold the funds for like 9 months, and that wasn't going to work technically for them. So it wasn't technically possible to do it, but doing it this way, it would very easily be very technical. It would be incredibly simplistic to do it this way. And that's where it gets that's why I say it is different in an interesting way, because we could, if Donald Trump decides to run again, then we absolutely could do something like this. And I imagine if Trump does run again, I imagine we could raise a couple $100 million to persuade him not to run again. So it could be very interesting, and it could make it very easy to do tons of amazing crowd-funded acquisitions of all kinds of things. In addition to the Constitution, for example, you could have all kinds of crowd-funded. People could participate in auctions, in fractional ownership of all kinds of things. So the next article, I guess, if we jump into the next one, is while Twitter users mock NFTs and Web3, believers retaliate. Oh, let me read that again. It says, while Twitter users mock NFTs and Web3 believers retaliate, Andreessen Horowitz, Facebook, and others are investing in the crypto industry to remake the internet in their image. And it says, who will win the Web3 culture war? Well, the geeks will win that one. That's as geeks always have.
Geeks up to
Well,
100.
A16Z, which is nothing but a collection of geeks.
But the question, it's just a blog post by somebody who hasn't closely followed the history of tech to know how these things usually play out. Yeah, technologies often get criticized and are, people are skeptical, and then but geeks are proven themselves to be insanely relentless when it comes to these things. So
Headline is so funny. Right clickers versus the monkey JPG owners.
what's that?
No, the headline of this article is very funny. It says right clickers versus the monkey JPG owners.
I
Look
have
at the
no
top.
idea what you're
Yeah,
talking.
the JPEG owners. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
always
Right.
wondered about that. So
Oh, right clickers versus the monkey JPEG owners. Okay, meaning the monkey JPEG owners is slang for people who bought NFTs of the stoned apes or whatever, which are NFT owners, versus the right clickers, which means people who just take images, and versus the people who own those NFTs. Who will win the Web3 culture war? Well, Ryan, the person who wrote the post, I can assure you the NFT owners in that case will win. But the next article is that Pew who's a massive research group, has done some research about Twitter usage, and they say that 42% of Twitter users primarily use Twitter for entertainment, and only 20% use Twitter primarily for news. 1/3 of Twitter users visit less than once a week, and 66 visit at least once a week. And the next one is from the Wall Street Journal, that Ohio Attorney General is suing Meta/Facebook on behalf of an Ohio pension fund and Facebook investors, alleging Facebook executives misled the public about its product's negative impacts on minors. And as the Wall Street Journal says, and they're writing this article, so I imagine they feel rather proud that they are rather directly responsible for this lawsuit against Facebook, because this is directly related to the journalistic work, if you want to call it that the Wall Street Journal did with the whistleblower, Frances Haugen, where one of the initial revelations was a document which the Wall Street Journal claims shows that Facebook is toxic for young, and Facebook knows that Instagram is toxic to young female users. And that was the claim in the Wall Street Journal. And the question is that in fact true? And I would point you to who was that? NPR, National Public Radio, who themselves wanted to know how accurate that is. So they, as they tend to do, went to some real authorities on the issue of doing research in a clinical sense, a clinical psychologist, researcher, and asked them, is this legitimate, this survey that a Facebook team member did a little informal survey asking teenage users how they feel, how they think Instagram makes them feel. And the response from the NPR piece, from the clinical psychologist researcher, says that is not how psychology or research works. You don't ask the person how you think this thing makes you feel. That is useless in a research context. So just based on that alone, I would say this entire lawsuit is garbage, based on that researcher's very firm assertion that you can't ask the subject of your psychological research how they think something makes them feel. That's not valid research. Thus, it's not science. Thus, it's not fact. So,
Well, it's not, it could be science, but it could be unethical from the perspective of the kind of polling or questions that you want to pose. Leading questions like that destroy the objectivity of such surveys. So self-reporting is famously unreliable. So you usually have to play all of these games, like the Minnesota multiphasic inventory asks you the same question 6 different ways. So it gives you this kind of spread so you can measure the variance or repeatability of some of these questions. So it's very important to do it carefully. So if it was an internal research, it wasn't done in the most rigorous of standard, or up to the rigorous
Well, there are
standards that usually you
different
have in academia.
research. There are different research modalities and methodologies. And so interpretive science actually does allow for psychometric analysis, where in which people are they reflect in how they're feeling. So if you're going to do a lab rat type of objective research, then no, you want to be as so-called, objective as possible. But interpretive scientists, they acknowledge that people are that life is a social construct. And so I would not go so far as to say that the research itself is not valid. It's a different type of research. It's not something that you would find in in a positivistic research study per se. But I would not go so far as to say that the research is invalid.
You'd get hassled by the ethics office or the people who usually review these things before they go live. At least at the university where I work, they're quite sticklers to being as objective as you
Absolutely, the
can be.
institutional review board. Yeah. So in U.S., yes, all research has to go before the institutional research board, and that's essentially to make sure that the research itself is not doing harm, particularly when you're dealing with human subjects, people, and minors and other vulnerable populations.
Absolutely.
How do you think this will play out, Lakeisha? This particular case of this lawsuit, they're suing for $100 billion because they're claiming that the stock went down because of these Wall Street Journal articles
Well,
and
well,
Facebook.
it really didn't go down as we discussed on
I know,
the earlier call,
I understand,
but yeah.
but they're
Yeah,
saying, the
But
stock went
there
down
is
because you got
damages.
caught doing something that the assumptive kind of claim here is that Facebook knew that it had done something wrong. It didn't fix it, and somebody blew the whistle, and that got out. And so Facebook's responsible for
But
any.
Tyler,
Yeah,
we all know in America, because of our litigation system, given just the raw number of articles, true or not, or partially true or whatever, because there's been so much stuff thrown at them. Okay, that you're going to get a derivative shareholder suit. There's going to be a settlement, and some people are going to collect money because that's the unfortunate way America is. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they're guilty of if they're not guilty. There's just enough, stuff that's been thrown out of them at them by major publications that it's not going to go to trial. Okay, and so that's what it is.
But there
yeah,
is an onus to the institutions, and when I say institutions, I mean like just journalists in general and the media industry to not be so biased in the data that they use, and just have
I
it.
know, but that's
Yeah.
water under the bridge. And now you're asking about why the Attorney General of Ohio did what he did, because he wanted to get first mover advantage as the lead plaintiff. But as the lead plaintiff, he could also, if he's certified as the lead, of Ohio gets certified as that, he can ask for punitives, which is probably how they got to 100 billion. Okay, and then he figures I'll collect some money for the Ohio pension system. Why not? It's free money. It's laying on the table. I mean, that's the way, unfortunately, it works in the United States with our litigation system. So, I mean, I mean, I don't know if he actually really feels aggrieved, or the Ohio pension system really feels aggrieved. But why not sue? Why should he wait for Virginia to sue?
Well, and as I shared earlier, I'm actually, part of my retirement is with the Ohio, with the Ohio State, the state of Ohio. But I do think that there's another piece to this, and I think that it may be political as well. So, as the Attorney General of that state, there's a fiduciary responsibility to the people, in this case, whose retirement pensions were invested in Facebook, and so whether they settle or not, I agree with you, Ken. It's a matter of taking the action, and in this case, being first mover, because I doubt that Ohio will be the only state that will file suit. I mean, it could be frivolous. And, to answer your question, Tyler, I, as a researcher, would want to actually look at the research, the hypotheses, the questions, et cetera. So I really can't tell you, what I think will happen until I actually look at, the structure of the actual study and the analysis.
okay. Shall we get into the next one? Amazon agrees to pay $500,000 to California for concealing COVID-19 case numbers from its workers. The first such action under the state's new right to know law. And the UK supermarket Sainsbury becomes the first known customer for Amazon's Just Walk Out tech outside of the US, starting with a London store opening November 29th. Sainsbury's is the first Just Walk Out customer. Grocery expected to open 29th, and it's it's basically based on cameras inside of the shop. The Groceries Pocket Market in the High Holborn district is already open to Sainsbury's employees. A visit to the store on Monday showed a full-stocked small grocery store with stations on the way in for shoppers to scan a mobile phone. Angled cameras suspended from the ceiling track what shoppers pick up from the shelves, and they are charged upon exit. The system of software, cameras, and shelf technology is made by a third-party supplier, according to a Sainsbury webpage that appears to describe the new store, calling the concept Smart Shop Pick and Go. The technology supplier is Amazon. According to people familiar with the matter, an employee told Bloomberg on Monday that the store will open to customers on October 29. Quote, "We regularly trial new and convenient ways for customers to shop with us, and we're currently testing an upgraded version of the Smart Shop with colleagues at one of our Holborn stores." And there you go. Amazon jump-started interest in cashierless shopping with the Amazon Go branded chain of convenience stores, blah, 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 blah. And they're going to try and convert all of the existing supermarkets into these digital, self-checkout supermarkets. What do they call these? Cashierless supermarkets. And no doubt, Amazon's going to get a whole lot of data about what you're buying. They're going to know who you are and what you're buying at these supermarkets.
I'll be curious what the supermarket checkers in the United States think about this,
I
because it's
imagine.
a pretty large job, and I think they're going to resist this technology.
I think they're all going to go.
Although we have self-checkout in most supermarkets now, it's just that there's always a person there. And
Mm-hmm. Okay, it says, somebody on Twitter says, Amazon to open 260 supermarkets across UK as it plots to take on Tesco and Sainsbury directly. Well, that would be not easy to build.
No, yeah, not all. That's a lot of places.
Here, it's an article. I'll pin the article to the top of the room right here. It says, revealed, Amazon to open 260 supermarkets across UK. When's the date on this? Today. The article came out today. Amazon has developed detailed plans to storm the UK supermarket sector as the e-commerce is planning to open hundreds of cashierless grocery stores across the country in the next 3 years. More than 260 Amazon-owned and run supermarkets are to be launched before the end of 2024, namely 60 in 2022, another 100 in 2023, and 100 more the year after. All Amazon supermarkets will be cashierless, the online retail giant wrote in internal documents, according to Business Insider report.
Keep in mind, these don't have to be very large. If they aim at essentially urban centers, they can just be a small little, just enough to basically say we have a physical presence here. We build up communities. We basically get people signed up for the thing. As they basically have that footprint, then they can expand out to larger facilities. But the thing is, they can get very impressive numbers on that with a very light investment if they do this right.
Yeah, it says they're in High Holborn, and obviously, like in those types of spaces, I don't know whether people have been in London, but it's just like super cramped. So when you find those little local areas, especially with young people, such as like Canary Wharf and stuff, like it could be okay, I guess. But unless it was like the size of a bodega, I don't see it really working. Like, because the way that the UK set up with just buying space for shopping centers and just grocery stores is totally different. So but Amazon is Amazon, so they can probably do it anyways.
They have
But
a
from
really
my
interesting thing up
my
there. Sorry.
daughter's experience in London, they don't really go to the grocery anymore. They use uh, shopping uh, apps like Able and Cole, or there are a couple of others, and they order online if they're high end.
The one in Seattle has absolutely carpeted the roof with sensors. It's actually insane. Like one of the measurements you can use, it's not a very common one, but when you work in like augmented reality or whatever with and looking at like IoT, one of the sensors measurements you can use is the sensors per square foot, just to kind of get a quick estimate of essentially estimating like data feeds going into an area or not. What's funny is going into the store in Seattle that they do all their prototyping on. You look at the roof and it's like, okay, there's a lidar thing there, there's a microphone one there, there's about 6 cameras there, and it's like ceiling tiles, but like every single thing. They're almost like little miniature like data just warehouses just sitting there right on the roof section. So I'd be curious essentially what kind of training sets they do, and they probably what I imagine what they do is they basically see which ones are actually useful for things. They just throw everything in the kitchen sink in there, and then they slim it down for the more scaled out releases. But it's really fascinating to watch in progress.
Yeah, multimodal sensing is really, really exciting. You can have very robust systems and even drop some of the sensors after the fact, and the systems can still do pretty good inference. So I think that people demonstrated a few years ago with Wi-Fi and Connect camera. So usually when you're starting some sort of new data set, it's usually best to just throw as much as you can on it, and then afterwards figure out what you don't need or what you do need. It just helps bring on the constraints, and then you can decide afterwards.
I mean, in US, even the groceries that have cashiers, they on some wholesale like Sam's Club or Wegman, they have a scan app, and you don't. I mean, I don't go to cashier. I just have my bags. I just grab my groceries, and then I check out on app. It's very easy, and I love it.
Well, if
For
we
this
go ahead.
Amazon ones, I wanted to jump up. What data are they collecting? Because you're not mentioning GDPR. So Chris, I think you were talking about it, that they're, I mean, are they doing this without actually getting any personal data on the people, without taking like actual photos of them?
It's actually the exact opposite. When you basically, in order to walk into the store, you have to sign a membership agreement that has a somewhat extensive amount of things, much more so than saying, "Hey, I get a little." This is already well established in the grocery store stuff. I don't think people understand it very much, but essentially, when you sign up for a membership, discount card saying, "I want to save 5 cents off of Tostitos or whatever." You're basically also giving permission for basically assigning a unique ID and number to yourself that basically allows them to target their entire supply chain, marketing, everything built around you as basically a reference customer for that. And what's interesting in this traditional grocery store model, you actually are given a slight financial amount of value because you are delivering value to them, and you get a slight amount of discount back for that. So that's at least something that what's interesting with Amazon doing here is I don't necessarily see that as being something that they're offering, because they're basically actually going to be offering this at a slightly higher price. And if your data ends up training a more advanced model, I don't see them basically saying, okay, now because we basically figured out that your face helped train the model that basically allows it to more recognize shoppers at a 0.1% accuracy increase. You're not going to see that on a personal basis. That's just going into Bezos's next rocket project. But
Well,
yeah,
no, this is interesting, Chris, to your point. I bet a lot of people don't, I mean, again, people don't read terms of service. People aren't going to realize it when they bought that membership to shop here. Because I was wondering, where are they getting that permission? If they're getting biometric data, is it just posted at the store, or are they
I'll be
doing
right
it?
back.
Yeah,
it's core to
and
the
in
business
the
model.
Yeah,
UK,
it's in the membership, and this is
Sweetheart,
also a really good example of
you
where
see somebody
GDPR,
coming,
people aren't going
you
to be able
see
to like get their
customer
data out
coming
of there or
for
get it corrected
A5
or anything
tomorrow.
else, whatever. But they're also, it's a great example where smaller
Yeah,
entities
me
who
too. I
can't
see now
afford
also.
that can't, GDPR is protecting the bigger companies
Have
who can
room can
afford
do
to
like
comply with it, right?
a 3, 4,
Yeah,
5,
and in
6,
the
7,
UK,
8.
the Data Protection Act states that
Any
you
room?
have to explicitly tell people what you're taking from them as well. So and there's a lot that goes into that,
Okay.
especially with like our social media is just totally different
Yep.
to
Well, yeah,
other
you have to
places
tell them
social
what
media as
exactly
You can
well.
what you're
change A4,
getting,
no
how you'll
problem.
use it, and only take what's necessary,
Okay.
and how you'll use it, and everything else. But it's
Yeah.
again, it's still pretty broad, and people love to throw that word out without really. I mean, I deal with it on the corporate end, so I deal with all the contracts
Okay.
around that.
I do event now,
Um,
but I call you when
and
I
I think
finish.
people think it's a lot more protective than it is.
Well, so it's weird in this specific use case
No.
is because Amazon is literally like they're going without cashiers, they're going without security guards. They actually do have one or two there, but the long term goal is to have like a fully automated, there's not human beings involved process. So from the moment that you step on the premises, they know who you are via every biometric trick they can use, from your palm prints to facial identification to voice, whatever they're going to use. Keep in mind they've got the Alexa database as well for every single voice print for everyone, the credit
But
cards, etc. But the key part is once you've identified the person leaving into the store, it's not physically possible for you to steal from them at that point because they know who you are. They just send the credit card billing, they send the bill to essentially the right place. So one of the interesting things with grocery stores is because they have such low margin overheads. I'm sorry, such low margin that they can make with things, even though there's a mass amount of cash going back and forth between it in a typical grocery store. The margins can basically be entirely removed when you have essentially a certain amount of shrinkage per thing, either by shoppers or by employees. So just by removing that component alone, Amazon already has a competitive advantage. Once you start stacking all the other components, it starts getting kind of interesting.
I read an article that it says uh, when you after the shopping they charge you from your Amazon Prime account. Does that mean you have to have an account, Amazon account, before
Yep.
you enter this? So that means you have maybe give your consent to that before you enter in this room.
Now, what
Just
the more meta consent aspect that gets more interesting is because many of these companies, like Amazon has done in prior markets, where they enter in as basically a side player, but then they become a dominant one, and then they basically end up shuffling everyone around until they basically, or Google and other companies like Google, you cannot run an internet website without Google at this point, because essentially the amount of visibility they have on the internet is absolutely insane. The thing that's interesting this from a meta perspective is that it's one thing when you can theoretically go without email or go without clicking on websites that might have an analytics tracker on it, which is not possible anymore. But when you start doing this with someone's food supply, of going, well, the three other grocery stores around my neighborhood shut down, and the only ones that left are, this super. I have to agree to basically all my biometrics being permanently out there. That's a very different sort of arrangement, and that can really affect where a lot of people live.
Yeah, and I just finished reading the Current City AM article on the top as well because I'm really intrigued in how they're going to be using the tech and what, like, I really want to know what inside an Amazon store looks like. But they're using the southeastern areas like Thamesmead, Dartford, all of that stuff, and it seems a bit like, to me it seems odd, but just understanding that them having the real estate around these very pinpoint locations means it will be easier to even automate e-commerce sales, so, and even transport deliveries to people's houses, because end of the day what people use Amazon most for is home buys. So it's like I don't see people necessarily going to the stores, but more so getting their deliveries brought to them. But if someone wants to go into an Amazon store, then having that location there is important, especially when you're in London or in Kent, the Kent area as well. So I feel like, yeah, just it's going to be expanding the e-commerce market more than most things. Like it said in the article, about 26% of sales came from e-commerce for grocery sales. So, yeah, just seeing all of the article, it's when I think about it more as a delivery service, then it makes a lot more sense to me than seeing it as a grocery where old people, which is what Dartford 50% is like a retirement area, but a lot more young people are coming in and moving out from just the millennials and people that new families are coming to Dartford and to Kent and stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting predicament, and Amazon is just particularly ruthless. So yeah, I've seen the delivery portion of that and the automated deliveries as well being quite high with them.
One more slightly
One thing.
sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like last time I was in England, I found it exceedingly difficult to buy fresh fruit and fresh vegetables compared to Canada, for example. The supermarkets here are like overflowing with fresh produce. If Amazon can bring that to England, which normally is very industrialized, or I would say like the city is very very expensive. Like a $200 or £200 meal in London is equivalent to like a $50 meal in Canada. And so if they can help drive down some of those prices, I think that can also address some of the inequity with nutrition, which I believe is it Jamie Oliver, the chef there in the UK, was working with the Queen to help improve the nutrition of children there. So I think if at least you get that, I think it'll be a net positive. Although all the data privacy stuff, I don't know if you'll still be able to use the GDPR to help with that.
Yeah,
So
that is insane that you brought that up. And Jamie Oliver, people see him as like just a tyrant with school meals and stuff like that. But um when we use actually going to the supermarket, it's not people buying fresh fruit from the supermarket is quite odd. Like most people who know what they're doing go to a greengrocer and generally go to a butcher. So those are two different places. So a supermarket isn't the one place where you just buy everything from. Like you would never buy a steak from the supermarket. You would go to your local butchers from there, and you know him by name, and you know the type of farm that he uses and how he herds his animals and all sorts. So there's just a different, how would you say, there's just a different relationship between what the UK has with fresh food and what it has with home goods such as like frozen food and just packaged goods and stuff.
One more
Is it?
component is that Britain's historically, with things been a food importer, it shaped a lot of their history, rise and fall of empires, kind of stuff. So one thing that's interesting with Amazon is building up more of an international footprint, not just essentially in countries, but between countries. It does offer some somewhat unique competitive advantages they might be able to take advantage of, especially for more processed foods that essentially have a higher margin on them than say like bananas. One more thing to throw out there with things just as a fun possibility. I doubt this is the primary reason they're doing this, but it's definitely something they're gonna pay attention to. Uh, the number of Amazon Prime customers that they have, they know a lot about the shopping habits. They know about where people live, etc. And now with Alexa, they've got voice prints. Where it gets interesting is if you could basically say, "Hey, you've got essentially part of your Prime membership is you could basically get free bananas. You get all or you can stop by for some banana bread or whatever delicious food there is at the local thing. You get a discount. All you have to do is just go visit the local Amazon store." Well, guess what? When you walked into the Amazon store, all your biometrics now have been updated into the database. Everything from your palm prints, the facial parts, all the parts they couldn't get over the computer long range, they now have essentially a scanning station for essentially anyone in the neighborhood. If you make a single purchase there, that's enough. You got the data set on that. Now all you need to do is just basically have the entire local population shop there at least once or twice, just enough to sign a legal contract, walk in, get scanned, and now you have one of the largest biometric databases on the population that basically can continuously basically see updates essentially on everything that when a new sensor gets rolled out.
Well,
So
also, Chris,
yeah,
will be even earlier than that. I mean, low level than that. Like I'm in California, so we have Whole Foods that they own, and they give a very minimal discount if you use your Amazon card or whatever that thing is. So they're tracking your purchases, and they know who I am because it's my Amazon account. They may not have the biometrics, or maybe they do from my Alexa, but just population wise, they know exactly what to stock, exactly when to tell you, you need to ship it via Amazon, or they know what they can correlate all that shopping, right? And by, as you're saying, by the area, by the geography and what people here are doing.
I would also say that the UK has been ransacked by pandemic. The high streets are basically desolate. And so I think local councils will welcome this as a way to try and get people to come back to, local communities. Supermarkets and, shops like that are quite a big way to build people just back on the streets. When lots of businesses have been shutting down. So that could be something that maybe why it's welcomed.
Amazon, champion of the local neighborhood community. You think
No
you know
way,
and love.
health data. Think about it. If you're buying all that processed food, next thing they're going to put in there is a pharmacy, right?
That's
Yep,
real. That's what. Yeah,
and
you
they'll have the
get your
biometrics for essentially for identification.
pharmaceuticals
Perhaps you could get
within
like
the supermarket.
a
They already own a
$25
pharmacy.
voucher. If you buy a 6 pack of Oreo cookies, you could get a $25 discount for the health clinic.
Right, for the
Diabetes
diabetes
checkups.
medicine, exactly, and
Yeah.
the depression medicine,
Or
and they're going to have to.
Or
Yeah.
better yet, if you get 2 liter bottles of Coke, you can participate in the new blood sugar test that they're
No, no,
doing.
no. Coke is for cleaning. You know that. Are you watching Instagram? Coke is for cleaning.
Food
Coke
and
can clean
pharma in
anything.
one shop shop.
My
Yeah, if it's a one-stop shop where you get your pharmaceuticals,
my
your
father used to use Coke to clean battery leads
Yeah, if
in
you
the.
haven't been on Instagram this weekend, it's all the rage. You can clean everything with Coca Cola. We
Oh
expect to
yeah,
see a spike in Coca Cola.
you definitely can clean your car battery leads with it, and you can also clean coin pennies. Copper pennies.
You
It
can
Just
cleans
flush
them.
it
imagine what it
too.
does
Yeah.
to currency.
So after he realized they can drink it, right?
Okay,
The
so
coins.
next up, we've got, where's the next one? China is warning state firms to exit cryptocurrency mining and is considering punitive measures for those that do not comply.
Poor people that didn't get out soon when they could.
And the next one is from The Information. They say they have a source that Instacart has postponed IPO plans until next year as it focuses on expanding its services for retailers beyond delivery. Meaning what
So one more
exactly?
thing to throw about that IPO with stuff, just because if one of the gambles they can make on this is that just going from COVID to post COVID, that could be a huge spike in basically in revenue profitability. And if they're very careful with how they measure their metrics and stuff, they say, look, we're growing exponentially because we were growing crappily during COVID. Now look, we're growing a lot. And so then they can say, imagine if we can make that same increase in growth as if we got a pandemic recovery for every year. And then they price their valuation on that. Everyone makes that wealthy from the IPO, and then it's like, okay, well, what do you know? It kind of slowed down like everything else does, but life continues.
It says that they're doing it to give themselves more time to accelerate growth, to fend off competition from DoorDash and Uber, which are expected to increase their share of the grocery market business, as well as Whole Foods owner Amazon and convenience startup GoPuff. Instacart's full year revenue is expected to increase at least 10% compared to last year, said the person with knowledge of the situations. Pushed off plans for IPO until next year, focusing strengthening its services for grocery retailers beyond delivery. The decision marks a shift from earlier this year when Instacart executives discussed listing the company's shares in the fourth quarter. The race is just that's an incredibly hot race. Like DoorDash just bought Wolt here in Scandinavia for $8 billion. And Wolt is doing well in Japan as well, but it's a Nordic startup. They're based out of Helsinki. And Uber, all these guys are going to start. It's a mad rush to cover the planet and just suck up as much of the market share in the same way that Uber battled with other companies and acquired other companies around the planet, kind of a consolidation. And you always end up in the same scenario where you got 2 or 3 big, companies that are going to control the whole pie for delivery. And it's whoever can raise the most money and subsidize the cost and suck up all the customers and lock everybody in. Not so different from the streaming platform wars or anything else, but is this, the people who can last the longest in this race are going to have crazy, insane valuations for years to come because they're locking in the future of the way consumers consume.
Well, I mean, like people spend like what, like $5-10 a month on music compared to, well, you're going to spend hundreds of dollars a month on food, and it's a
Precisely.
much larger percentage of the population. So, well, I mean, like
Precisely.
everyone needs to buy food, so you're looking at literally 100x markup essentially compared to what you might see in the music market, but it's the
Well,
same tactics.
also, Chris, the it's not. I think post COVID is going to be people still are going to have a lot of this delivered. People just like having things come to them, and the newer generations, at least around here, don't cook, so they like. I mean, they literally order this stuff every night. So even when restaurants open, there's still going to be plenty of nights that they're ordering at home.
It takes 6 weeks. I don't know why people don't. It's cooking's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I cook.
Okay,
It's
next one.
therapeutic.
I'm thinking of starting a startup where I grow food at your house for you, and then you can pick it out of the yard whenever you feel like it.
Wait, Tyler, again, are you not watching Instagram? They have all those like indoor climbing garden things is the newest tech takeoff that's going to be worth $1 bazillion. Yeah, they're actually growing them inside.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
You would have to
You can.
start another service or make it part of your service for it to be a total solution. You would have to pick the food too. You can't.
yeah, no.
You
and
can't just grow it.
and it
No, Dr.
and
Francine, they have all those robotic arms. This you've got it. That's we
and
just have to throw all this together. We have to. That's our
Exactly.
offering.
Exactly. You could,
Exactly.
but you have to present to the market a complete solution. You know that, Tyler.
Well, I need a
then
robotic arm with
feed
a
it.
bag full of
Yeah.
protein gel at the end of it, and it just squeezes it. You just lay down on the couch while you watch TV, and the arm will find your mouth with the kind of image recognition, and just
Hey,
squeeze the tube
I saw
right
that
into your
movie.
mouth.
Yeah, I saw that movie. It's called Wall-E.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
the
like
new
the Goose.
concept for assisted living.
Yeah.
But you can
Wait,
start it earlier in life. You don't. Why wait until you're old with stuff? You can start assistant and
Yeah,
then.
Oh, baby cribs. Oh,
Yeah,
buy and launch.
retirement facilities, baby
thing.
cribs, nursery. Yeah.
Hey, I want a school version.
Okay. The next one is from Hartley Charlton at Mac Rumors. He says Apple defends its ads for third-party apps, which is a response to a big headline yesterday that people had found in the wild examples of Apple advertising for apps like Tinder and HBO Plus, and catching many off guard, saying, why is Apple spending money on Google ads to drive traffic to their own app store because they get a 30% cut of those apps. Of course, they're not going to do that for the apps that don't give them a 30% cut, perhaps as a way to keep people on board with allowing their 30% cut, because if you don't, then they obviously aren't going to buy ads to your apps. Anywho, so Apple has now responded about this, saying that they are these ads are marked as being from the App Store and have been live for 5 years. And it regularly communicates with developers about this.
I mean, Google pays Apple what, 16 billion or so. You think this is one of the freebies they threw in?
I think Apple's legitimately participating in the auctions, but the problem is they're competing against the apps themselves in these auctions, kind of driving up the price of the ad. So it says, following allegations that Apple secretly buys ads for subscription-based apps like Tinder to collect more commission from the App Store, Apple has now said that this is a mischaracterization of and developers are fully aware of the ads it runs on their behalf. Earlier today, Mac Rumors reported on an article by Forbes which claimed that Apple secretly or quietly places ads for subscription-based apps without the consent to bolster its collection of commission on in-app purchases in a form of ad arbitrage. Apple has now clarified that it places ads to promote products it distributes for 5 years now, and these ads are clearly marked as being from the App Store. Apple indicated that this is no different from retailers running ads for the products they sell. I told you they would use exactly that as their defense, did I not? I said Apple is going to use in their defense the fact that retailers sell Apple products and they run ads for those Apple products that they sell. I told you that would be their defense, and here they are using it as their defense. And they said it's a very standard business model. Apple is granted conventional legal rights to advertise in this way in the agreements it has with developers. Yep. And those developers, in many cases, agreed to that without realizing it, because people don't read the shit they agree to. Apple says that the allegation that it is secretly or quietly purchasing ads for developers without their knowledge or consent is an overt mischaracterization. On the contrary, the company says that it regularly engages in conversations with developers about the ads it places, and many developers express their appreciation for this support. Apple says it is committed to providing developers with resources they need to be successful in the App Store, These resources include compilers, testing and debugging tools, technical support, SDKs, libraries, APIs, and more. And they also include advertising both inside and outside the App Store. Apple's
Man, they
advertising
have
for
that script down by now. They really want to basically have scientists say, yes, we support developers. Please let us keep this cut. Don't regulate us.
So the next one is a new one that just came out from Wired. It says how investigators are using open source tech to identify, track down, and expose foul play and questionable practices in DeFi. And this is from Wired. Open source investigators are struggling to maintain law and order in the wildest recesses of cryptocurrency's Wild West. Let's see, is there anything of interest in here? Earlier last month, a jargon-laden post by a pseudonymous Twitter handle set off a storm in the cryptocurrency world. The account called itself gabagool.eth and referred and featured a fuchsia nebula as its profile picture. It called out what it saw as foul play in decentralized finance, or DeFi, a galaxy of blockchain-based apps providing cryptocurrency lending and exchanging services. Creators of DeFi protocols often foster user loyalty by staging airdrops. And on October 8th, Gabagool spotted something suspicious. A cluster of 36 wallets that had received the Ribbon tokens had swiftly exchanged them for the popular Ether cryptocurrency, then transferred the Ether to one cryptocurrency wallet. Gabagool thought that the person or people behind that wallet had likely created the 36 Ribbon accounts shortly before the airdrop to maximize their chance of getting tokens. By Gabagool's calculations, the wallet to which they were transferred accrued at least 652 Ether, valued at $2.3 million at the time. I thought, okay, this person kind of gamed the airdrop. This man running the Gabagool handle tells me in a phone call. That kind of chicanery is not unusual in cryptocurrency trading, a sphere where fake identities and sock puppets abound. Then Gabagool discovered who owned the wallet by cross-referencing the address with information from Twitter and crypto wallet register ENS domains. Gabagool concluded it belonged to Bridget Harris, a junior employee at Divergence Ventures, a San Francisco-backed venture capital firm that had invested in over 50 cryptocurrency projects, including Ribbon. Gabagool saw that as dishonest. He wondered whether, as a Ribbon backer, Divergence Ventures might have had advanced knowledge of the airdrop and then used that intel to milk millions out of it by converting the Ribbon's tokens to Ether. Quote, they attempted to exploit that information to extract profit, and they did so while publicly stating to be very bullish and excited about Ribbon, he says. Comparing the actions to insider trading, Gabagool distilled his information in a tweet, which kind of blew up as soon as he fired it off. Divergence Ventures denied insider knowledge about the airdrop, but later admitted to crossing a line. It eventually returned the Ether to Ribbon. In the wake of the incident, reference to the Ribbon investment disappeared from Divergence Ventures' website. Divergence Ventures did not reply to a request for comment, and Harris did not reply to several requests for an interview via Twitter. Gabagool is among an emerging breed of sleuths bent on spotting, tracking down, and exposing questionable practices in the budding DeFi world. I think you get the idea of the article now. You got internet sleuths out there in DeFi. So the next one is from Fred Wilson, the somewhat legendary New York VC, who has made quite a killing in tech over the years as one of the early birds in tech investing. And he's writing a blog post about these $100 million post-money seed rounds that are not economically viable. If you do the math on this, then he's doing a public service by explaining to all the newbie investors who are new to the whole game of tech that this don't really work if we keep having these $100 million seed round valuations.
Well, to be fair, there are some companies that are deep tech, so you might be playing like a 5 or 10 year game with respect to the technology alone, not just the investment. So if you are able to analyze or evaluate whether it is a feasible technology, yeah, but I don't think the majority of all of these seed rounds have deep tech or promising technology of that variety.
Yeah, he laid out all the math. He says we've been seeing quite a few seed rounds getting done in and around $100 million post-money valuations, and that concerns me for a few reasons. And he gives 4 reasons. Number 1, seed stage is when a company has a good team, a good idea, but has not yet proven product market fit and go-to-market model, and has not yet demonstrated a sustainable business model. Number 2, the investments have high failure rate. In my experience, roughly half of seed stage investments fail completely, wiping out everyone's investment, including the founding team. Number 3, this is a lot of dilution from the seed round to exit. In my experience, a seed investor will only be diluted by around 2/3 between seed and exit. Number 4, a power law distribution exists in outcomes in early stage portfolio, and a seed portfolio is no different. So given that I'm jet lagged and up at 3:30 in the morning, I modeled this out to see how it all works. Here's the Google sheet in case you want to look at my model. And he calculates the math on this of the normal traditional metrics of how investments play out. And he says, given the assumptions, a $100 million seed fund that makes all of its investments at $100 million post-money valuation will barely return the fund. And that number is gross before fees and carry. Now, all of this depends on a few important assumptions, and he goes into all of that in exquisite detail, and it makes a very strong case for why $100 million valuation seed rounds are not a good idea mathematically. So it's a really interesting post, and it's getting a lot of traction amongst investors. So his friend Bajan says, as always, super insightful post by my friend Fred Wilson and his friend Howard Lindzon. Basically, a lot of his closer friends are all supporting his post, but he makes a good point. So the next one is that Tel Aviv-based EasySend, which offers no-code tools for customer interactions, raises $55 million. And researchers say they used a new Rowhammer exploit to successfully flip bits on a 40 PC DDR4 DRAM device, defeating recent hardware mitigations, meaning your memory inside of your devices is hackable. And yesterday we had headlines from Intel and who was the other one? AMD, both claiming dozens of vulnerabilities in their chips. So again, just the daily update that your devices are not secure. And the next one is that the information says they have sources that ByteDance, the owner of TikTok's gross revenue, is on track to rise 60% year over year to $63 billion this year, slightly lower than last year's growth. And People Data Labs, which offers data as a service through APIs with 3 billion profiles of people globally, raises $45 million, led by David Sachs and the team over at Craft Ventures. They're setting out to create a single source of truth for B2B data products based on 3 billion people profiles globally. Data as a service. People Data Labs. Data as a service through APIs with 3 billion profiles of people globally. What is that all about? Founded in San Francisco in 2015, People Data Labs has built a duo of APIs for developers, engineers, and data scientists to access people-related data. This includes an enrichment API for those seeking to augment their existing records with additional data, and a search API for those wishing to query the full dataset without hosting any of the data themselves. Users can specify the full search criteria and parameters. In its 6-year history, People Data Labs has amassed a fairly impressive roster of clients, including IBM, Kleiner Perkins, and Home Depot. In terms of use cases, sales and marketing teams can leverage the data to improve their existing qualified leads, or recruitment headhunters might use it to enrich the data they hold on potential candidates. but it can be used for anything from fraud detection to market research. Quote, we take the complexity out of dealing with large data sets. We gather our data from disparate sources, ensure it is compliant and accurate, clean it up, and furnish it to engineers and product developers in a form that is flexible, reliable, and easy to use. And they get the majority of their data from so-called Data Union, which is essentially a proprietary data sharing cooperative that bundles disparate data pools to enable any paying third party to unlock insights. Okay, that can be super interesting. So the next one is that TikTok users show that Disney's text-to-speech Rocket, the raccoon voice, wouldn't say words like gay, lesbian, or queer when people entered those texts in. The decision has now been reversed. Whatever was causing LGBT-related words to be silenced appears to have been reversed. A look at VR meeting startup Spatial, which in January pivoted to hosting NFT auctions in virtual spaces. Peloton sues rival fitness companies Echelon and iFit, claiming that both violated patents related to its on-demand classes. And a Latin American e-commerce platform called Mercado Libre, or Free Market, the region's most valuable company by market cap, plans to raise $1 billion. That's a very big Latin American e-commerce platform indeed. And according to the Wall Street Journal, doctors and researchers say that social media is contributing to the rise of negative body image issues and eating disorder cases among boys. Until you actually open the article and read the article and the quote from the actual doctors, which says something a little bit different, saying that, to be specific, this is one of many factors, and even as one of many factors, it's an aspect, but not causal. And so it's what we
Yeah,
call
these headlines are kind of the headlines are kind of silly, I think sometimes, and I wonder if the recent Alex Jones, I guess, court case is going to change the way that some people at least post headlines because he got in a lot of trouble for that Sandy Hook hoax statement. So
yeah,
let's see
as
if
he
that
should,
happens.
as all journalists should. CNN lost a case they not lost a case, but they settled a case with a high schooler recently, and some legal pundits are claiming that if Kyle Rittenhouse gets off, is given, which that decision should be coming in soon, and if the jury acquits him, that he might have a standing for suing some media outlets that were less than accurate of their assessment of that whole incident.
Yeah, you call it it's not journalism, it's activism. And so when you cross that line, I think that's kind of a faux pas. So if he has been slandered or something and his reputation as a young man is ruined, like a 17-year-old child makes a mistake. Children make mistakes, and the court system is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. They've even had problems with the jury selection in that particular case because there was so much coverage before the case, so it was hard to find jurors who were isolated or insulated from the kind of
Yeah,
media blast that came out.
yeah, and more to that point, they had to employ a really interesting strategy of having 18 jurors and instead of 12, although only 12 will be selected to give the final decision, because they need to give cover and plausible deniability to the 12 so that none of them, any one of them, if cornered in a dark alley with a gun, can say, well, I wasn't one of the final 12. I was only one of the 18, but I wasn't selected on the final 12. And the only reason you need to go to such lengths to protect jury members is because you have a wildly misinformed populace, which
That can
is,
be dangerous with that kind of information, though. So
well, yeah,
you
but
can't have somebody who's
by the point, they're not being misinformed by Facebook now, are they? They're being misinformed by the mainstream media. And the point is, CNN settled on a very large case for he was suing for like $200 million. And is Facebook losing cases on misinformation? Are they paying settlements based on misinformation?
They have better lobbyists.
So next one
Hey
is,
Tyler,
yes,
before you move on, and I'm sorry if I had to go take a phone call,
sure.
and I am going to have to go, but there's breaking news in the Wall Street Journal on a subject that we've discussed in this room a lot. So I wanted to give you the headline, and I tweeted
Sure.
it out, and then I'm gonna just tell you what it is, and then you got to take it from there because I do have
Okay.
other things unfortunately I have to go to. But the Wall Street Journal just broke news that. An employee at Activision video game studio reported being raped by a supervisor. CEO Bobby Kotick didn't tell the board. And it says Activision CEO Bobby Kotick knew for years about um, sexual misconduct allegations at the video game giant. Top executive did not inform the board of some reports, including alleged rapes. Company faces multiple regulatory investigations, and there's a massive article. And I tweeted it to Tech News, and you could take it from there because literally
Okay.
I have to go, and I apologize for that,
No
but I
problem.
wanted to let you know that. Okay,
How long ago did you send it?
just like in the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an important story. I was actually speaking with a few people who are game industry insiders, and they said this kind of attitude is quite pervasive. It's very toxic, and very rarely is it addressed. So this is, I think, going to be a case that kind of sets the mark in a similar way to Harvey Weinstein, where we're going to see how systematically the allure, the romance of, oh, I work in video games, you can get seduced into a situation where you don't really understand, hey, I'm getting paid much less than usual, and I'm also tolerating all this abuse just because I believe in this idea. I'm overworked, and it's a very abusive industry overall for the people who are coming into it. After about a decade, it's a little bit easier, but they sure do use people like crazy.
So I just pinned the article to the top of the room and I've tweeted it out to the Tech News Twitter account. It says Activision CEO Bobby Kotick knew for years about sexual misconduct allegations at video game giant. The top executive didn't inform board of some reports, including alleged rapes. Company faces multiple regulatory investigations. And it says Bobby Kotick, the longtime chief executive of video game giant Activision Blizzard, received a troubling email in July 2018. A lawyer for a former employee at Sledgehammer Games, an Activision-owned studio, alleged in the email that her client had been raped in 2016 and 2017 by her male supervisor after she had been pressured to consume too much alcohol in the office and at work events. The female employee reported the incidents to Sledgehammer Human Resources Department and other supervisors, but nothing happened, according to the email, which threatened a lawsuit against the company. Within months of receiving the email, said people familiar with the situation, Activision reached an out-of-court settlement with the woman who had reported one of the incidents to the police. Mr. Kotick didn't inform the company board of directors about the alleged rapes or the settlement, said people with knowledge of the board. Activision has been thrown into turmoil in recent months by multiple regulatory investigations into alleged sexual assaults and mistreatment of female employees dating back years. Mr. Kotick has told directors and other executives he wasn't aware of many of the allegations of misconduct, and he has played down others, according to people familiar with the matter and internal documents. Now, this is, first of all, this is terrible, but I'm assuming, and I wonder what others are thinking, that because this was a subsidiary company called Sledgehammer Games, which is one of the many, many game studios that Activision is the owner of, that this is Sledgehammer Games' CEO may not have told its parent owner, Activision, that this had happened. And
Everybody knows apparently in the industry, so it's not something that is even kept quiet word gets around. The worst thing here is that it was a settlement, I think. The fact that the person who ever perpetrated it did not face justice because of oh, it's my word against his, and it's beyond a reasonable doubt. No. But balance of probabilities in a civil case, much easier to win that argument. So a lot of women are finding themselves actually bringing on civil cases because, one, they're much more effective, and men seem to care much more about losing money. So, at least for males assaulting females. But of course, that's not the only
Actually,
kind of assault that happens.
yeah, you're
Well,
right.
corporate wise, it also gets into SEC if they're public companies, right? So if they're not, if they know of these behaviors and the fact that it risks the company, which it does, these settlements, and they're not, if their executives are aware of these and not disclosing them to the board and investors or dealing with it, then that gets into material violations under the SEC as well.
Okay. That covers the big boring articles for today. Let's do a refresh, Cheryl, and see if there's any new ones that came in while we covered those. Appears not. Nope. Okay, so now we get into the tweets. And the first tweet I have is from Eric IO. A scientist tracking the coronavirus predicts it will keep mutating to avoid the immune response, but at a slower rate than before.
Yeah, and on average, the virus was mutating about 2 to 4 letters. That is nucleotides, those little A, C, T's, G's. The rate seems to have slowed down. So one thing about viral stability is a virus seeks to achieve some sort of equilibrium. And from the evolutionary sense, that information wants to keep propagating. That seems to be kind of what we call evolution, is these structures that seem to want to integrate themselves. And just from history, there is a viral protein that exists in the brain that is responsible for synaptic pruning. It seems that there was a virus that integrated, and depending on the expression of these proteins, you manifest schizophrenia or you don't, because it controls the amount of synapses that are active or maintained. So, from the perspective of what this virus is doing, it's not necessarily integrating into the genome, but it is finding an equilibrium within the population. So, this suggests that it will become endemic, but it may become less harmful. And Dr. Dinesh is here, so he'll probably also have a comment about this as
well. Maybe. Donish, you have a thought?
Sorry, I missed the context. What are you
Well,
guys talking about? Sorry.
I've got two that you might have context on. One from Albert Bates in the audience from the New York Times. The headline says, "A new source of fuel in an aging Japan. Adult incontinence. Waste from adult diapers is growing by tens of thousands of tons a year in Japan. One town may have a solution: recycle it into fuel pellets. In rapidly aging Japan, older adults now use more diapers than babies do. Diaper waste is projected to grow a further 23% by 2030. One town is recycling used diapers into fuel."
my university town actually recycles dog poop and makes it into fuel. So, if you want to make the trip, you can transport your poop there. But they have modules in certain areas around the city, so it's definitely something that's already been.
You
I
could
think the
there's
proof of concept has been demonstrated.
that's really literally shitloads of fuel.
Shitloads of money.
So the next one, Donish might have a thought on. A Parisian meaning from Paris, a medtech startup from Paris called the Lifen raises 50 million euros to bring healthcare systems into the digital age. The startup has built its success up to now on the digitization of medical reports based on proven technologies. There's a whole lot of money in that space. So the next one is from Jeff G in the audience from Wired. The headline says, "Used EVs are in hotter demand than ever before. Congress is now considering an incentive that could help low and moderate income buyers go electric." And Hassan sends in this article that the Russian military confirmed that they destroyed the Soviet satellite named the Selena D. And they claim its debris did not and will not pose a threat to orbital stations and space activities. However, however, the International Space Station took it as a very serious cause for alarm. And NASA says that this was irresponsible and destabilizing action. Bill Nelson, who's a senator and the 14th NASA administrator, so he knows a thing or two about this, took to Twitter to say that debris generated by the dangerous Russian ASAT test causes the ISS, International Space Station, astronauts and cosmonauts to undertake emergency procedures for safety. It's unthinkable that Russia would endanger not only international partner astronauts on the ISS, but also their own cosmonauts.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, so for example, let's say something hits you at 7 kilometers a second, and you're on the other side of the glass on the space station. A chip can break on the other side of the glass because the momentum transfers over, but that little chipped piece now travels a little bit faster than 7 kilometers a second. For example, if it's a tenth of the size, up to as much as I think several multiples of that energy can be so you end up getting a much, much faster little speck flying on the other side, which can do a lot more damage to humans. Maybe not necessarily the structure, but it can be catastrophic because depressurization can also be very, very quick, about 30 seconds from a simple microfracture.
Carl found a related headline from CNN that says United States says it won't tolerate Russia's reckless and dangerous anti-satellite missile test. The United States strongly condemned a Russian anti-satellite test on Monday that forced crew members on the ISS to scramble into their spacecraft for safety, calling it a reckless and dangerous act and saying that it won't tolerate behavior that puts international interests at risk. You get the gist. Russia has demonstrated a deliberate disregard for the security, safety, stability, and long-term sustainability of the space domain for all nations.
That's
Said
unfortunate because usually Russia and America work really closely in space. That was the one thing that I had as hope. Even though we don't seem to get along on Earth, in space, because it's so challenging, at least the Russians and Americans are working together. Yeah, maybe the Chinese weren't part of it, but maybe they'll come in. But now it seems that space is experiencing a fracturing event similar to what happened with the Android, oddly enough, when it was coming out. So hopefully, I think when the parties settle, we'll still have something like, hey, we have Russians on one side of the table, we have Americans on the other side of the table. The guy introduces himself as, hey, I'm Rusty. And they say, we cannot possibly, in our good conscience, call someone erosion. We will instead call you by your name, Paul. And that's usually like a joke about, how caring the Russians were. So I wonder what the reason was behind this sort of deliberate, for lack of a better word, sabotage.
Well, and then the other weird thing about it too is not only did they put U.S. astronauts in danger, they put their own cosmonauts in danger. And so I'm kind of curious what everyone's thoughts on the ISS were.
Well, it's like when the Berlin Wall fell down. There was a Russian astronaut left in space, and everybody kind of forgot about him. So I'm not. I think they may be considered guinea pigs at this point, unfortunately. But hopefully everyone is safe and remains safe, and we get through this. So
yeah. So, Donish, you just found an article here about Biden.
Yeah, so breaking U.S. to boycott Beijing Olympics just came out in the Washington Post. So, as many know, last week Biden and Xi had a virtual summit. It's now complete. It's finished. And this diplomatic boycott came after, and it's actually currently on Biden's desk, and he's likely to approve it by the end of the month. It's crazy, and the reasoning behind it is largely around the human rights issues, not around anything else specific like COVID, but more around the human rights issues that have existed for some time. This is likened to the 1980s, I believe, Jimmy Carter boycott of the Soviet Olympics that at the time had been seen as a victory for the U.S. I wonder how this is going to be seen. It's fascinating.
See,
Huge move.
I thought he was offended that Xi Jinping said they were old pals, and Biden said, "No, no, we're not old pals. Stop telling that to people. You know what? I'm not showing up to your Olympics. Okay, make that clear. We are not friends. I am not showing up for your games."
Yeah, but for all those
It's a
Olympians who train their entire lives for this, I mean, that's brutal.
It also is, I mean, let's be honest, last time this happened, we were in a Cold War. So I wonder what this means from a broader perspective. And it's a huge deal. I think people may think, well, who cares if we don't show up for the Olympics? It is us saying on a world stage that we will not stand for this. And I think that's a fascinating move right after we signed an accord with China.
Yeah, will any other countries follow suit though? Because I think that will define whether there is collective action against China or whether it's just America doing classical saber rattling. I hope that there is some sort of conclusion that is beneficial because nobody wins during a war. Although Cold Wars tend to be very profitable, they're also very tense. You don't have the same threat from nuclear weapons, but cyber can, turn off the power grid and your people can suffer. So it's definitely a very tense situation, in my opinion. But I was actually at the Berlin Wall as a 4-year-old kid when they took it down. So it's definitely something that if you didn't live in that era, you don't really appreciate it. And I grew up then hearing all these stories from my mother about how the Russians in Poland really oppressed people and so on. And it was very difficult for folks, and you had to line up for shoes. Thank God we're not lining up for shoes with shoe tickets anymore, but we're definitely still in a situation where we're reliant on them, and everything we have in our homes basically is made in China. So how's that going to play out?
So, um,
But the boycott is not officially announced, so
No, it's not, but it's
yeah.
likely.
But yeah,
It's
the
likely.
title says yes, soon to. But today's meeting, actually, it's yesterday. Um, I think they try to at least remain the peaceful uh, arrangement or even over Taiwan issues because Biden said it's still Taiwan Agreement Act and those six. Uh, it's old strategic ambiguity. So, like after all this fights or these tensions between China and US now back to the old policy again. So this talk war seems back to zero again. So for Taiwan's angle, so it's not the US is supporting the dependence of Taiwan, but it rather said, yeah, we'll follow the Taiwan. Uh,
Well, BB,
the
just to kind of be very clear, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to say that according to the Washington Post, although the administration technically has not finalized this decision, a formal recommendation has been made to the president, and he's expected to approve it before the end of the month. Administration sources confirmed. So, if anybody that's been paying attention knows that there is a special relationship that exists between the administration and the Washington Post. And we've seen this time and time again. I would be very surprised if this was not very confirmed at the very top
What do you
to
mean by
leak this
special though?
information.
Like insider or?
If you look at a lot of the Washington Post has been very uh, gets very early insight into some of these announcements, and I don't think that this happened because of a leak. I'm pretty sure this happened as a plan, and this seems
So
like a very planned. Yeah,
so it's
they
some
said.
sort of House of Cards thing.
Well, sort of. I don't want to overplay that. I was just saying that I would be very surprised if after the Washington Post has now published this, if America does not do a diplomatic boycott. And by the way, there's different types of boycotts that they can do. One is a diplomatic boycott, one is an economic boycott. This is a diplomatic boycott specifically that they have now, told the press. And again, it's not surprising. I actually think that they're using the human rights abuses as cover. I think this is much more about
they are now adversaries, and they are showing that China's recent moves are not going to be accepted. It is actually scary, I believe, in my opinion, because I think it's the first shot fired publicly.
I would just add that the meeting between Biden and President Xi yesterday was actually quite, well, in this context at least, for these two countries and these two men, quite positive. Biden said, he was referred to as his old friend by President Xi, and they both went on to discuss a diverse array of issues, but also this comes in the bat of the climate joint statement that was quite a surprise to the delegates at COP26. And this is being seen by most geopolitical analysts as a sort of an attempt by both sides to reset relations after the antagonistic activities of the PLA on Taiwan, and obviously America's strategical ambiguity for Taiwan as well. So it's going to have hopefully some improvements for global geopolitics generally. But yeah, just wanted to add that because I think it's an important context as well.
But Piotr, then what do you make of this Washington Post breaking news around America doing a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics?
I haven't read much into that, if I'm honest. I mean, we've seen boycotts before the 1980s, with Moscow and America. But at that point, relations between Gorbachev, who was beginning to be, pulled into the main position, along with the American administration, Reagan was beginning to show signs of improvement. So we've seen this before. I would pay more attention to the two presidents meeting yesterday as a sign of where they want to take the relationship more than the boycott. That's of course important, but in the grander scheme of things, I don't think it will carry as much weight.
Well,
The
there's two.
relationship status changed from we knew each other to no, we were never close to begin with.
What two big things happened yesterday was that obviously the International Space Station situation, and then the meeting of the presidents. I kind of wonder if this is to get the U.S. is hoping that China will not continue further space partnerships with Russia, and I'm wondering if they're using the Olympics as a negotiation tool.
Well, the space launch was Russia's idiotic attempt to destroy its own satellite. To the point, as I said in the Giant Leaps Club, yesterday, it's Russia and America have few things that they cooperate on, but space is one of them. Astropolitics is, a growing area of geopolitics. China's been increasing its budget. I think its space budget is about 11 billion now. NASA's is about 23.5. Russia's, I don't know. It's not as much as that. All I would say is that, the relationship of China to Russia is an interesting one. The relationship of America to Russia is obviously long-standingly difficult, and the relationship of America to China is everything's in a state of flux, and we're very much seeing a transition from U.S. hegemony to multipolar world. Can't say that word today. So the two coinciding is a coincidence. It's not one of a reflection of the other. Russia has its reservations with China given its activities in the Arctic. China declared itself a near Arctic power about 3 years ago. And that the relationship between China and Russia is one of strategical convenience and nothing more. The thing that ties them closest together is the test of American hegemony. So as soon as there's any opportunity for the two to deviate, they will. So I think, America can spy opportunities, maybe the Russians in certain areas, but yeah, the events with Russia yesterday in the space station are not related to, we need to make sure that they're kept independent. It's all great
Well,
power politics at the end of the day.
well, I think they could be related from one perspective because we've stopped being Russia's customer for their rockets. SpaceX has done such a great job that, okay, well, we figured it out. Way
I'll
to
be
go.
back in 1 minute.
But now they need a customer for their space programs. Russia does want to stay international, I think. So working with the Chinese is the next logical conclusion. And what better way to show that the two are correlated than to say, oops, look, what happened today? The Russians just happened to do a satellite disruption test. What a weird coincidence, right, Mr. President?
Russia
Yeah,
also flipped the International Space Station, I think 190 degrees about a month ago or so. That really irritated me too.
at the end of the day, any amount of collaboration and cooperation between, the two largest economic powers and any nuclear power is a positive. I was very concerned by the events with Taiwan. And I'm still very, very much against the CCP and how they treat many of their people, particularly the Uyghurs. But, in the big scheme of international security and stability, I think, we should welcome as many positive, messages and calls for cooperation as possible. We'll have to see how this works out with the Russian angle as well. That's all.
Okay, we got to get through the rest of these headlines here. We're getting close to the top of the hour. So Cheryl found this one from DW in Germany that Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna are earning a combined profit of more than $1,000 every second through their COVID-19 vaccines. And I believe she also found this interesting one from Wired that I just tweeted out, which says how to tell which emails quietly track you. Your emails know more about you than you think, like when you open them or when you forward them to others, but you can reclaim your privacy. Then this article from Wired tells you how to stop tracking emails, specifically the instructions in Gmail. So I will pin that one to the top here for those. I just tweeted it as well to the Tech News Twitter account. And there it is at the top of the room, hopefully. The next one is that Pfizer agrees to let other companies make its COVID-19 pill. Drug maker Pfizer has signed a deal with a UN-backed group to allow other manufacturers to make its experimental COVID-19 pill. Okay, and next one, let me tweet that out as well. I think that's really good news because you need a whole lot of companies making those around the planet. Because pills, unlike vaccines, don't need to be refrigerated and can get all around the world very quickly. And that is one of the best things that ever happened in this fight against COVID, actually. So the next one's from David Crace in the audience from the Chronicle. The headline says, campus counselors are burned out and short-staffed. More students are asking for help. Their suffering is more acute, and the pandemic has made it harder for centers to recruit counselors, all leading to one glorious clusterfuck that is really taking a toll on campus counselors.
Yeah, but the universities also don't pay competitively for those counselors. Like I've spoken with counselors at universities, having taught there and so on, and myself using those services. It is very difficult work watching young people suffer in a time as difficult as now. And I think like suicide rates have gone up and all of these other components as everybody's been focused on, I guess, the economy, and it's kind of a silent tragedy. So if you have children that are, in school at whatever level, but with the university level, it's especially important to speak to them. I think since everybody has been so disconnected, it's even more important than ever to reach out, make sure somebody's okay.
Okay, so you said it was not okay. Next one is from Evan. Found this one that drone delivery specialists Wing, which is part of Google, lifts the lid on its secret testing facility for doing drone deliveries. And it says that Wing has a video below shared by Alphabet-owned company Wing shows how its team is continuing to develop its drone technology while at the same time running trial services, delivering snacks, and over-the-counter pharmaceuticals to residents in places as Logan City near Brisbane. So I just tweeted that out. So in case you want to watch that video about the drone testing facility, which may be coming to a city near you soon. Thank you for that one, Evan. Evan also sends in a fun one for us to play. Our favorite show, Tech News Jeopardy. So let's jump into... Oh, do I have the music? I do. Here we go. Tech News Jeopardy, everybody. And Messi's not here, so you actually have a chance today. And Ellen's going to win this one. Ellen, you cannot compete in this one. What is the world's largest sovereign wealth fund?
The Saudi Wealth Fund.
Per capita?
The Saudi fund is not in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have the top 8. It's not in the top 8.
Total?
Huh?
Friends of Sally Mae.
Is it per capita or total?
Total.
Then the big countries then.
Swedish.
Norway.
Singapore is pretty big, but we are too small.
I got help from the.
Singapore is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Singapore is number 6.
Oh,
Okay, back to Norway.
China.
I'll switch mine to Norway then.
It's China,
Norway.
but it goes by a different name than sovereign fund.
Norway then, Norway.
China's number
Alan's
2.
country.
China Investment
Yeah,
Corporation.
by the population. Come on.
Number
India,
1 is Norway.
They don't touch their fund. That's the thing.
The world's largest sovereign wealth fund is Norway.
Well, no way.
Number 2 is China. Number 3 is Kuwait. Number 4 is Abu Dhabi. Number 5 is Hong Kong. Number 6 is...
What's this list? Is it the CIA World Fact Book, or is it World Bank, or what's the source of this list?
Source of this list is...
Okay.
Just because I'm getting a slightly different list here after doing a quick look on Wikipedia, but Wikipedia has sometimes multiple sources as well, so I'm trying to see what the difference is, because my number 3 was Singapore, and then China again, and then Saudi Arabia, then Kuwait.
I think there's per capita.
I bet if you included the corporate takeovers in China, they'd be way above as number 1.
Yeah. It says...
Now I understand why Ellen has to pay for the subway.
She doesn't... Yeah, doesn't pay, you mean.
She paid, right? She paid for your subway, right?
Oh, my sandwich. From Subway Sandwich. Yes. No, but she doesn't pay for the subway in Norway, I don't think. Maybe they do. The source says it's the Sovereign Wealth Fund AUM, gathered on October 8th, 2021.
Yeah, Tyler, the Norway, they've never touched their sovereign wealth fund, and that's they've been accumulating that for a long, long time.
Well, they invest quite heavily in a lot of things.
Yeah, but the thing is here that the oil fund in Norway, that is a time bomb. As soon as they touch it, they will have a rocket inflation.
Why is that? Why would that happen? Sorry, just like can you explain that quickly, or is it like a I have to sit down with a notepad for an hour kind of thing?
It's quite a long one, and I think we actually should bring Cal into that calculus, because he and me actually briefly touched on that about half a year ago. And the Norwegian oil fund is hazardous to touch, because the thing is that as soon as you start fiddling with that money that has been funded in that way it is, you will have effects on the whole country that nobody can actually foresee what will happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Some more articles to go here. South Korea lawmaker says Apple and Google not doing enough to comply with South Korea's new App Store laws, where they have to make it possible for developers to collect payments directly from their users, and Apple and Google understandably don't want to give up those billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars. And will be interesting to see what it's going to take to convince them to comply. And Dr. Fran found a really crazy one that zebrafish in virtual reality experiment predict the future to avoid danger. Scientists in Japan have discovered particular neurons in the brain that monitor whether predictions made by fish actually come true. By making use of a new virtual reality outfitted aquarium where brain imaging of zebrafish can be done as they learn and navigate through virtual reality cues, researchers found neurons that allow effective risk avoidance and create a hazard map in the brain that allows for escape to safety. I really don't
That's
know
It's
amazing.
not,
how this
That's
works.
that's not
amazing.
really well, that's not really prediction as much as they probably are sensing environmental changes that we don't pick up. Like they probably have a lot of sensitivity to very, very, very slight and minor changes to us, but to them, it's probably like signaled as opposed to, it's not like they're, they're prognosticating on what is going to happen where. They're probably already sensing it. We just can't tell them what the sense is.
I think the inference happens very, very automatically, but it happens almost in the same way that lightning happens. If you've ever actually watched lightning in slow mo, it branches out in multiple directions, and then you have one of the paths actually then concludes and makes contact. So I think from previous studies with rats or mice, I believe, they had electrodes in the mouse's brain, and they would have it go through a maze. When it went through a maze, it would have a certain kind of activity in their brain. And then when the mouse was sleeping, there would be a different kind of activity, similar to what was before. But the scientists asked, like, what is this difference accounting for? And then when building an algorithm that mapped the activity from their motor cortex and other planning regions to a computer that tried to make it a one-to-one and onto map, you were then able to infer that it seemed like the little rodent was dreaming about being in the maze, and the next time they went through, maybe they went that way. So very interesting stuff, very exciting to see that they used VR, I think, or like the concepts of virtual reality to scan that. So that's really impressive. Wow.
Yeah, I just wanted to add using VR nowadays for predator, exposure to predator or threats, it's getting quite common and it's hypothesized to be more accurate than just, pairing a tone and a shock. So that's why, the criticism has been it's not really something naturally happening in the environment. So people are switching, especially labs that have more money, to using virtual reality to simulate like a predator combined with a smell. Even it's even more effective. So there has been a pressure to basically go away from just stuff that's not like what naturally would happen, but you still have to do it in the lab. So people just have been doing this for quite some years. And also, that animals use prediction. I'm not sure what's so surprising about it, because we know that we cannot possibly react in real time to changes in environment. We would always lag and be eaten right away by predators. So all animals have to do it. And I just wanted to add that neurons itself are little computers and still way more effective than any artificial neural networks that we currently build from the resources that they use and the computational power they have. So I just wanted to add that.
So next one's
Thank you, Katerina.
from Alexandra. Just sent this one in that Finland plans to let workers see their colleagues' salaries transparently to close gender pay gap. The Finnish government is planning a new law allowing workers to check what their colleagues are earning if they suspect they are being discriminated against. And Ken,
It doesn't say, sorry,
go ahead.
it doesn't say if you if you have to submit proof of discrimination or whatever, or if it's basically that's just your reasoning and everybody gets to see your data. But I think it's interesting, there are a couple of countries that I've seen that have broadly available salaries, and they also have the broadly available, like the characteristics for each role. so that you can see easily what you need to do in order to qualify for a promotion, and also, what your pay should be. And people in those countries have apparently said that, that they like it. But I can't imagine it being, like any sort of wide adoption like in the US, because we like being able to, add bonuses for people who are performers, and we also like being able to reduce salaries for, women, people of color, anyone else we don't like. We love doing that. So and we like not having to explain it. So I can't really see it being adopted here, but I thought it was a very interesting thing to see whether or not that's something that would you want to know. Do you see it now, and would you want to know? Are you at a company that actually shows you what it is, or I don't know. I just want to know if anybody thought it was a good idea.
In Sweden, we have full transparency. I can actually pull anyone's tax reports from the last 10 years by just going to the tax office and ask for it. So we don't have secret salaries in Sweden.
Okay, I gotta jump out, but we look forward to the next one tomorrow, which you can click on the title of the room. And actually, there's the AI tech news coming up here. You can click on that.
Yes, it's pinned on top, and I think Cami will probably start it earlier. So after this, we can jump there.
Alrighty, thank you, everybody. We'll